This block is about learning outcomes. We're going to talk about two aspects of learning outcomes. First, we're going to look at why we use them, what the advantages and disadvantages are. And secondly, we're going to look at how you write them. Because in block 4, you're actually going to write your own learning outcomes for your own course. So here we have the intended learning outcomes for this block. So what you are going to achieve, we hope, by the end of the block, you will have considered the advantages and disadvantages of using learning outcomes, of introducing them into the curriculum, and I think you'll have learned how to avoid some of the worst disadvantages. You will have a good working knowledge, I hope, of how to write your own learning outcomes, and you'll be ready for the sequencing exercises next block. And you will have started, or you will have started and included in your archive some very useful material on developing learning outcomes. Okay. What are the advantages of learning outcomes? Why is it, do you think, that universities all over the world, systems in every country, every continent, have started using competence and outcomes-based approaches in higher education? Now, we have to admit that this isn't actually without controversy either. There are quite a lot of people working in higher education who are staunchly opposed to introducing learning outcomes because they see it as diminishing the knowledge base, the building of knowledge in universities. But before we start talking about the bad things, let's think about some of the positive aspects of using learning outcomes. I think we should start by looking at the students. Students today, graduating from university, go out into the world, into a huge range of different careers. When I was a student, the number of potential careers for university graduates was fairly limited and typically fairly academic. Nowadays, they can go into any job you can think of. So any program which doesn't take account of their need to do things with what they learn at university is going to fail them. And employers nowadays don't just want somebody with a degree. And they say, oh, he's got a degree, he's a grand fellow, or she's got a degree, how wonderful. No. They want the degree, yes, but they want something else. They want people who can become positive contributors to the business or organization that they become part of. And this requires a range of competencies about using the knowledge that you've gained. But I've done work in many different countries looking at what employers want from university graduates. And surprisingly enough, they rate the knowledge-related competencies and outcomes much lower than what they call soft skills. They want the knowledge, the subject knowledge, but they also want people who can work in teams, who can communicate, who can give oral presentations, possibly better than me, who can have positive attitudes and outlooks, who can time keep, who can stick to the unwritten rules of the company and get on with people. And overall, most employers want people who can work from a good ethical stance. So you see that concentrating on the content of a course is very good for your students in one respect, because they have to learn the content of the subject. But on the other hand, they need to develop a whole range of other competencies in order to be employable. I think another reason for including competencies, enjoyment. Perhaps I'm old-fashioned, but I think that you should enjoy whatever you're doing, whether you're working or whether you're studying. And what introducing a range of learning outcomes does for your students is that it gives texture, it gives variety. You teach in different ways, their learning activities are different, the assessments are different, because you are focusing on developing a range of outcomes within them. And of course, this makes university more interesting. I can remember when I was at university being bored, rigid most of the time, because what I had to do was get from the lecturer's head into my head what he was or she was trying to tell me, and then regurgitate it in exams. So I don't think that nowadays we want our students to learn like that. And I think if you think about how students learn, one of the typical or the accepted things in the theory of how students learn is the kind of learners they are. Some students are said to be deep learners. They want to really understand and penetrate the knowledge. Others are said to be superficial learners. They just want to get it in so that they can regurgitate it in the exam. And others are more strategic. They will do what they think is necessary to pass the exams. Now, my personal opinion is that all students are capable of all three modes of learning. And again, if you have a variety of outcomes, a variety of approaches in teaching, learning and assessment, you are catering for everybody's preferences in a way that using a simple knowledge-based, content-based approach doesn't fulfill, I think is the word I want. And finally, I think an outcomes-based approach is transparent. We tell you at the beginning of every block, these are the learning outcomes. If you tell your students, these are the outcomes you can achieve in my course, then they see what they're supposed to be learning from the very beginning. They know that they are going to have a variety of ways of getting to it. And I think that this focuses the students on learning without inhibiting creativity. Now at this point, if you like, you can do task 3.1, or you can go on listening to the next section.